Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington REALTORS Legal Hotline Lawyer. And this is another episode in our series entitled A Fresh Look at Fair Housing. And I'm joined once more by...
I'm Adria Buchanan, the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Center of Washington.
And...
I'm Deborah Blom. I'm a realtor in Clark County.
And in this episode, we want to focus on the acceptance of applications and review process associated with landlords reviewing tenant applications and what is expected of a landlord in that process, and also what's prohibited by a landlord in that process. Adria, can I ask you to kick us off with this conversation? I have a feeling you are the expert on this one.
Well, we do, mostly work with renters. And so we see this a lot where people who have criminal backgrounds or they're using a particular source of income, they experience discrimination. And so really what I'd like to convey is for housing providers, leasing agents, people that are part of any step in the housing transaction process, that they're looking at applicants on a case-by-case basis. And they're not having these blanket policies around what types of applicant they're willing to accept. So we see things like, no felonies or no criminal background. Mm-hmm. We see that plastered all over advertisements for housing, as well as, no Section 8 or, really being explicit about what types of vouchers they take and don't take. And so in order to avoid a violation, housing providers should really be thinking about what risk are they trying to mitigate in their process. And so with criminal background, it's, is this person a specific threat to the property? Are they a specific threat to individuals? And if they're not, what is preventing you, again, going back to that, what is that justifiable business reason for you denying them access to the property? So those are just some of the things that we see. And so we really want to encourage, again, housing providers to look at people on a case-by-case basis, looking at what was the nature of the charge. We definitely don't want people being denied based off arrest records, because a lot of times people can be arrested, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've been convicted. So
if they're arrested but not convicted, does that show up on a...
It can. It can.
Okay.
So again, thinking about what was the nature of the violation? How long ago was it? Did it have anything to do with property? Did it have anything to do with people? Are they in any type of rehab or going through any type of process to show that they are trying to better themselves? Sometimes people, they've been convicted of drug possession or something like that, but they've gone through a rehab program. Okay. And so, again, really just thinking about what is the present day situation and are there any current risks to the property or to the other people that are living at the property.
Adria, what I think I hear you saying is that at no point should a property manager have, and it's not even just a property manager, it might be an individual broker who owns their own investment property, reviewing and receiving and reviewing applications. And what I think I hear you saying is that you should never have any bright line prohibitions.
Correct.
Based on anything like criminal background. What about sex offender status? Same.
Sex offenders have their own sets of regulations around where they can live and where they can't. And so if they are a sex offender, they know where they can live and where they can't. And so, you don't want to create additional barriers beyond what has already been put in place for them.
How does the landlord know that the tenant is adhering to their restrictions on where they're allowed to live? Would that come up on a background check?
That wouldn't come up on a background check. That would be something that the landlord would probably need to talk to their local jurisdiction about or local law enforcement about, and then they could get information around their property. What are the restrictions, how far from schools or, other places is the sex offender allowed to be?
So I typically think of this as being a conversation between the housing provider and the applicant. Tell me about, how long ago was that felony? What was it? What was your rehab? Have you served time? All of that stuff. If you had a job, have any other committed any other crimes or anything like that. Those are conversations I think of between the housing provider and the applicant. But you just injected a new resource. Would it be okay under the Fair Housing Act and Washington law for the housing provider to pick up the phone, if it's a sex offender, for example, and call the local police department and say, I have an applicant from somebody who is a registered level, whatever sex offender. Can you tell me if this specific individual has any restrictions on housing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you ask that question?
Absolutely. I think anytime that a housing provider is trying to provide greater access to housing, they can ask more intrusive questions in trying to get that person housing. So if you see there's a sex offender, you are trying to give them an opportunity. And, in order to do that, you need to understand what are the parameters that they're operating within. And so the sex offender, who knows, right? If they're a longtime sex offender, they know what their restrictions are. If it's a new charge, maybe they haven't yet been briefed around what exactly those restrictions are. And so I would say that inviting a conversation, if it involves law enforcement, that would not be a violation.
Okay. Great. All right. So treating every applicant on a case-by-case basis. No bright line prohibitions.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, that's the best way to do it, to ensure that you're limiting your own liability, but also providing all applicants the greatest opportunity to access that housing.
And then the questions that you do ask should be going towards seeking an answer to the specific question of, does this person present a risk of harm to the property or other persons? Is that it?
Correct.
Okay, great. If you have questions on this topic or any other, please ask me a question by visiting WARealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington REALTORS member.